It is 3 a.m. in New York, 10 in Kiev, and 4 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. We once again begin this Thursday afternoon on the Sewol-ho ferry disaster. The confirmed death toll now stands at 213, with 89 people, mostly teenagers, still unaccounted for. Now, for the latest on the search operations and the ongoing investigation into the sinking, our Kim Ji-yeon joins us live from the news center. Ji-yeon.
Well, the rescue team that first arrived at the ferry site on April 16th is under fire again over new information that reveals their slow and lax handling of the situation. It took the Mokpo Coast Guard more than 20 minutes to depart for the ferry site after being dispatched. The order was sent at around 8:58 a.m., but they didn't leave until 22 minutes later at 9:20. Faced with the criticism, the Korea Coast Guard downplayed the delay and said it was within their standards. Normally, it takes rescue teams few minutes, less than 5 minutes in all, to depart from their stations and head to the accident site. Critics say the rescue team should have been adequately trained and prepared to handle emergencies like the Sewol-ho ferry, especially in the waters that are notorious for the strong sea currents.
Right, and the government is drawing up measures to improve that part of the safety measures. But what about the search operations? It is in its 16th day. How is that progressing?
Well, divers are did focus their operations earlier today on the 4th floor of the vessel, mainly on the left side where most of the missing were thought to be, and on the 5th floor lobby. They found one body on the 4th floor, and the authorities said that they expect more progress in their search starting Friday, as they believe they'll finally be able to get inside cabins that have been blocked by debris. The Coast Guard once again tried to deploy a diving bell, but it was not very successful. A diving bell is a chamber that can be used as a base for divers, enabling them to stay underwater for about an hour without having to return to the surface.
All right, Ji-yeon, we know that there is an investigation going on the owner of the Cheonghae Marine Company, and things continue to build up speed, it seems.
That's right, Kun-young. A special investigation team is speeding up its probe, especially on the practical owner of the ferry operator, Yoo Byung-un, whose brother-in-law and 2 daughters have been notified to appear before prosecutors by Korea. They have less than 24 hours to meet that deadline. And one of the 7 key figures linked to Yoo is Song Guk-bin, the CEO of the cosmetics company called the Panda. Song was questioned for 14 hours Wednesday at the Incheon District Prosecutor's Office on suspicion of corruption. He is the second person to be questioned as a suspect following Kim Ji-yeon, the president of the Cheonghae Marine Company, for any involvement in business irregularities such as investment and the tax evasion in connection with Yoo. And also, investigations have been revealed that the Sewol-ho ferry was put up for sale 1 month before the accident. If the company would have sold it as asking the price, would have taken a loss of roughly $5.8 million. Investigators are trying to find out why, and that's all I have for you now, but I'll bring more updates later today.
In the wake of the ferry disaster, the government will put more money into establishing an integrated disaster response system and boosting emergency training. At a financial strategy meeting Thursday, President Park Geun-hye asked all ministries to make sure manuals that contain emergency response procedures are in place and those in charge are well informed and properly trained. While recognizing the need to spend more on welfare, the president also talked about maintaining the country's financial soundness through a so-called pay-go policy, whereby expenditures are paid for with funds that are already available. Overall spending expenditure be further increased or reduced by merging different projects, some 600 of them that overlap or are similar in nature over the next 3 years. Meanwhile, the unbearable wait continues on Jindo Island for dozens of families. They refuse to leave the area until their loved ones who are still missing return to them. Well, volunteer workers have been doing all they can, but now a group of people who have gone through a similar experience are on site to offer some support. Our Kwon So-ah has their story.
A group who knows as well as anyone the pain of having lost a family member in a ship disaster arrived on Jindo Island Wednesday afternoon to help the people who continue to wait for word of their loved ones who were aboard the Sewol-ho ferry. The new group of volunteers is made up of family members of the victims who lost their lives when the South Korean warship Cheonan sunk on March 26, 2010. 46 people tragically lost their lives that day. Around 30 of their family members went to Jindo to stay with the families at Paekmokhang Harbor and Jindo Indoor Auditorium. The people there waiting for word on the missing have been there for more than 2 weeks now and don't have much physical or mental strength left. The family members of the Cheonan victims said they want to pay back the help they received from other volunteers 4 years ago. They added that they are being careful not to draw attention to themselves, that they just want to provide help in any way they can. That includes doing the laundry, cleaning up, and serving food, among other tasks. They have also expressed their sorrow and frustration about the Sewol-ho tragedy.
I would have never thought that so many young students would die. And at this moment, I'm just sad. Why do these tragic incidents keep occurring? I hope this kind of tragedy never happens again.
Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Gon-yeon. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
U.S. researchers have been detecting increased activity at North Korea's nuclear test site, but say a nuclear test is not yet imminent if the regime follows its previous test practices. Satellite imagery posted on 38 North, a website run by the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University, shows vehicles and equipment outside a tunnel entrance at the Punggye site. Now, in the past, all equipment, vehicles, and personnel were withdrawn in the days before a test. However, the website admits it remains unclear whether North Korea will stick to the same procedures and timelines as it has in the past. It said the buildup may be different if Pyongyang is really preparing for a new form of nuclear test as it has threatened. Meanwhile, Washington has designated 4 countries, Cuba, Iran, Syria, and Sudan, as state sponsors of terrorism, but has once again left North Korea off that list. The State Department's annual report on terrorism released Wednesday did not include North Korea for the 7th straight year. The last time North Korea was listed was 2008. Now, the report says the terrorism sponsor state designation is given to a country that has repeatedly provided support for acts of international terrorism. It goes on to say that Pyongyang is not known to have sponsored any terrorist acts since the bombing of a Korean air flight in 1987. The U.S. has, however, recertified the North as a country, quote, not cooperating fully with Washington's counterterrorism efforts. Now, in domestic politics, with a little over 1 month remaining before the June 4th local elections, the nation's political parties are busy finalizing their list of men and women they want to put forward as candidates. While many races remain up in the air, some have already taken shape. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy have begun pinning down their mayoral and provincial governor candidates in the race toward the June 4th local elections. A number of races crystallized on Wednesday. In Busan, the nation's second-largest city, the ruling Saenuri Party's candidate is Heo Byung-soo. He'll face off against Kim Young-chun of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy and independent Oh Go-don.
I, Seo Byung-soo, will work to solve the unemployment problem and open up a future that guarantees a bountiful life for the citizens of Busan.
In Korea's fifth largest metropolis, Daejeon, Park Sung-ho of the Saenuri Party won 60% of the primary vote.
The primary vote is merely an event within the party. The ruling Saenuri Party must win in the upcoming local elections. We need your support.
In Chungcheongnam-do Province, ruling Saenuri Party's Chung Jin-seok will compete against the current provincial governor An Hee-jung of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy. Current Gangwon-do Province Governor Choi Mun-soon of the main opposition alliance will face off with the ruling party's Choi Heung-jip. The ruling party has finalized candidates for 14 of the 17 mayoral and provincial governor seats, while the main opposition has finalized 12 of its candidates. Candidates are chosen through a system that takes into account votes from party members, randomly chosen voters from the party, and the results of a phone survey. 지명길, ARIRANG News.
Now, on to a health news. The World Health Organization says growing antibiotic resistance is a major global threat and is calling for urgent action. A new report from the UN body warns unless steps are taken to reverse the trend, minor infections we are able to overcome today could end up killing us in the future. Our Kim Yeon-bin reports.
Global health authorities are sounding the alarm about the world's growing resistance to antibiotics, which they say could allow for a superbug to develop. A report by the UN's World Health Organization says the resistance is occurring right now and affects anyone, no matter their age or location in the world. The WHO's Assistant Director General for Health Security, Kiji Fukuda, said the world is entering into a post-antibiotic era, where minor infections and injuries that were easily treated for decades are killing again. The WHO report, which compiled data from 114 countries, said 2 key antibiotics in particular no longer work in more than half of people being treated in some countries. One of them, carbapenem, is used to treat people with life-threatening infections. The WHO is calling for urgent action to address the issue. Experts say drug resistance is driven by misuse and overuse of antibiotics, which has given bacteria a chance to build up immunity. To reverse the tide and stave off a global epidemic, experts say it will take political will and considerable investments in research and development. The WHO report also called for better hygiene, better access to clean water, and vaccinations to reduce the need for antibiotics. Kim Yeon-bin, ARIRANG News.
April was another solid month for Korean exports. The nation's trade balance has now been in the black for 27 straight months, and outbound shipments reached the $50 billion mark for just the second time ever. Our Song Ji-san has the details.
In the black for more than 2 years now. The Trade Ministry said Thursday that the nation's trade surplus stood at $4.5 billion in April, with outbound shipments surpassing the $50 billion mark for the second time in history. Last month's export figure of $50.3 billion is up 9% from the same month last year, while imports rose 5% to $45.9 billion. With the exception of LCD panels, most export items demonstrated strong growth, even steel and petroleum products, which showed sluggish growth last year. Deliveries of high value-added vessels, like drill ships, helped place the shipping industry at the top in terms of export growth. Traditional export engines like semiconductors and handsets also saw an expansion thanks in part to the launch of Samsung's new Galaxy S5 model. By region, exports to U.S. rose 19% in April, another sign that the U.S. economy is recovering at a robust pace. Outbound shipments to ASEAN countries and Japan also gained ground, but slowed to European nations and China. Trade officials said exporters expedited shipping and customs clearances in April before the holidays in the first week of May. Looking to the month ahead, slower growth is possible due to a fewer number of working days. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
But on the other hand, also picking up pace was Korea's consumer prices. It grew at the fastest pace in 8 months in April, easing concerns about deflation. The nation's consumer price index rose 1.5% from a year earlier, the fastest on-year rise since August last year. The price of fresh food like agricultural and fisheries products dropped, but rising utility costs like electricity, water, and gas, as well as home rental prices attributed to the spike. The data comes amid worries that the country might be entering a deflation phase as the consumer price growth has been stuck around 1% since last September. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Reserve on Wednesday continued to wind down its bond-buying stimulus program while maintaining its rosy outlook on the world's largest economy. It left its interest rate unchanged, pinned near zero. ARIRANG News Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
There were no big surprises after a two-day meeting of the U.S. Federal Reserve Policymaking Committee on Wednesday. The Fed said that it will scale back its bond-buying stimulus measures by another $10 billion to $45 billion a month starting in May. That is on track with the Fed's earlier plan to end the program as early as October. The central bank pointed to a pickup in growth, saying the economic slowdown in the first quarter was due to the harsh winter weather. Earlier in the day, a separate report showed that the U.S. economy grew just 0.1% in the first 3 months of this year.
People are looking forward, and the Fed is also looking forward. Some of the more recent data on auto sales and today's Chicago Purchasing Managers survey suggests that we're getting some strength, we're getting some recovery from that really tough cold winter.
The Fed, however, did not provide any new insight into when it will start raising its near-zero interest rates, which have held steady since December 2008. The bank reiterated that it will keep the rate unchanged for a considerable amount of time after the bond purchases end. The Fed began cutting back its $85 billion monthly bond-buying stimulus in December as it cautioned about potential bubbles in assets while labor markets improved. Hwang Ji-hye, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, May Day, which occurs on May 1st in many countries, stems from ancient customs associated with the celebration of spring. Well, it's also a national holiday for workers throughout the world, and Korea is no exception. Today, in light of Korea's Labor Day, let's take a look at some prominent labor issues facing Korean society today. Our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Ji-yeon, joins us live in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
So we don't have the day off, but we can talk about Labor Day.
Absolutely.
Right. So today, the Korea Confederation of Trade Unions, they're staging a protest rally in light of the Labor Day.
Right.
But their political tone is raising eyebrows among critics. Now, tell us why.
Yeah, looks like that is the case. And to explain it, I think we need to talk about the other national umbrella organization, which is FKTU, Federation of Korean Trade Unions. Yesterday, they had their internal meeting to remember the Labor Day, but they decided to cancel overall outside activities, outdoor activities. They had planned about 100,000 people gathering for this relatively more conservative umbrella organization, FKTU, but they said in light of the Sewol sinking incidents, they should cancel the overall gathering. But as you mentioned, KCTU, more radical or progressive side of this national umbrella organization, Korea Confederation of Trade Union. I believe as we speak, they are having this protest rally, walking all the way from the Seoul station to Seoul Plaza, staging protest against the government for the case about Sewol's sinking, asking the president to take the full responsibility, to offer her full apology and resign. So this is a fully anti-government style of protest that they're staging. And for that, the critics of this labor union are saying, are we talking about KCTU as a political organization? Of course, they've been politically active, but political party, actually anti-government political party that's going against the government itself? Or is this a umbrella labor organization that has been set up to promote the interest of the workers and to address key labor issues for the economy. So critics are raising their voice, I hear.
Right. So let's talk about the key issues. What are some key issues, key labor issues that require collective or organized labor, I suppose, participation in ironing out the differences?
Many issues at this point at the National Assembly. To begin with, we have a base wage issue about which the Supreme Court made its ruling last year, and the government came up with its guidelines. So National Assembly is supposed to come up with a new law. But however, with these two parties, the ruling and the opposition parties, disagreeing on key points, we need greater participation of all the interested parties, including the business community and labor, to iron out the differences and then come up with some kind of consensus so that we can have a new law. That's a lot of work to do. And also, in addition to that, we have, of course, the peak wage system that needs to be introduced together with the extended retirement age. We have other issues such as a shortened working hour system and also holiday pay. There are talks about how today's day off should be paid in terms of workers' holiday pay structure and all that. We need further details to be worked out on those. So a lot of issues to be worked out, but critics of the labor movement are saying that's where the labor union and labor organizations should participate and put in their input in order to come up with some kind of consensus and agreement. But they are staging this political protest on the street. That's what critics are not happy about.
Right, right. So many Korean workers, I suppose, do not feel that these organized labor represents their interests.
Yeah, it is increasingly the case. Looks like in Korea these days, they believe these kind of huge national organizations such as KCTU are the ones that represent the age of manufacturing in Korea, when Korean economy was growing based on manufacturing and in this kind of key large companies. Of course, their share still is great. Jabil companies' manufacturing side still account for large size of GDP. But however, in terms of population, working population, they don't anymore because these companies are highly automated and these workers are highly organized and highly paid and highly protected in terms of their jobs. While there is the other side of so-called dualism, these unprotected workers, unorganized, non-regular, hourly paid, what we call often in-house subcontract workers, which are not protected by these kind of organizations. And they need certain kind of protection and representation. And they're saying increasingly that's not happening. And we're only talking about so far manufacturing, but we have white-collar workers and increasingly the so-called knowledge workers, individual entrepreneurs. So they're saying these national organizations that are becoming more and more politicized are not exactly the ones that actually represent the interest of the workers which we are in this, working hard in this economy.
Right, which actually we do quite need a well-representation on our front as well.
Right.
Now, moving forward, what do we see ahead for Korea's labor movement and labor issues?
To briefly continue on the issue that I just talked about, looks like these kind of national umbrella organizations and old-style labor unions do not seem to really show their relevance in this day and age. So they're saying we need a third kind of labor. For a while there, we were hearing that there will be third kind of labor, third national umbrella organization that will be presented, but we no longer hear about that. It used to be called the People's, the trade union or confederation or whatever, 국민 노조, and it's no longer being talked about. But they're saying we need different kinds of institutional reorganization to represent the interest of the workers here in this country, as well as to talk about different kind of issues that are being presented as a result of the structural change of this economy as a whole. So they're saying maybe perhaps overall the labor movement itself may be getting outdated here.
Right.
Rather, we need more active discussion within political circles about how to preserve so-called this capitalism these days, which seems to be increasingly challenged by the problems with the finance and also financial sector, as well as growing polarization, growing imbalance and all that kind of stuff. So looks like we may be entering a new phase or new chapter of political economy here, where we need different kind of interest representation.
Right, so we might be seeing a different focus, the focus shifting in terms of an umbrella representation organization that really stands up for the interests of the workers.
Right, exactly.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, and we will speak with you tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, the weather conditions at the Sewol-ho ferry disaster site in Chindo have cleared up, but the spring tide period continues until tomorrow, which means currents will be faster than the usual, up to 2.5 meters per second. That is complicating the divers' search and efforts. Now, for the rest of the nation, after all that rain we had, we can finally expect a mild, sunny day across the nation today, and enjoy it while you can, because rain is in the forecast over the weekend in some regions, including in the capital. Now, and the entire nation will see precipitation on Sunday. Now, temperatures have jumped into the low to mid 20s across Korea and feeling like early summer like conditions. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul tops out at 23 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 24 and 21 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 20, Dokdo at 18, while Mangkunggang tops also at 18. Well, that's all I have at this moment. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Thank you, Michelle, for that, and thank you for watching. And do join me again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.